If you use Bitcoin, then blockchain explorers are one of the most powerful tools at your disposal. In this video, we're going to be talking about what blockchain explorers are, why they're so useful, and how to actually use them. Let's get started. So first, what is a blockchain explorer? Well, like the name suggests, it's a tool that allows you to explore the Bitcoin blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain is the ledger that keeps track of all of the Bitcoin balances so that people can verify that there's not any more Bitcoin than there's supposed to be. It also keeps track of all the settlement transactions ever since Bitcoin's genesis. The Explorer part is the tool that lives on your computer that allows you to search the blockchain for certain data. For example, you could look up transactions to see when they occurred and how much Bitcoin was being moved, where it was coming from, and where it's going. You can also search up addresses to check their balance and their transaction history. Blockchain explorers also allow you to look up pending transactions, which are not on the blockchain yet, but they have been broadcasted to the Bitcoin network. And so they are in the memory pool, and you can look them up and verify that they are there, they exist, but they have not been mined into a block just yet. Another thing that we should touch on is Bitcoin nodes. The blockchain is not stored in any one central location. There are copies of the blockchain all around the world wherever somebody runs a Bitcoin node. You could run a node yourself and have a copy of the blockchain in your home. Whenever you use a blockchain explorer, you must connect to a node. And so you could connect to your own node to use a blockchain explorer, or you could use a website that connects to a third-party node. That way you could use their node to scan the blockchain data for the information that you're interested in. So now that we've discussed blockchain explorers, I want to show you a couple of popular examples that are available for free on the internet. There are many more examples, but these are especially popular. First one I'm going to show you is Blockstream Explorer, which can be found at blockstream.info. It's a pretty basic website, but it does have a search bar that allows you to put in a transaction ID or a Bitcoin address to search for further information. Perhaps the most popular blockchain explorer is mempool.space. It is a beautiful website that gives you access to all kinds of data related to the blockchain. And this is the one that we're going to take a deeper dive on today. So let's take a closer look at mempool.space. So here I am on mempool.space's homepage, and we're going to start right at the top, which is where some of the most important information can be found. You're going to see these colorful cubes up here. These actually represent the blockchain. These are blocks on the blockchain. You can see that the most recent block as of recording this video is block number 900,971, and it was mined about 12 minutes ago. The block before that was mined about 40 minutes ago. And on average, a new block gets added to the blockchain every 10 minutes, but there's some randomness and this can fluctuate. On the other side of the dotted line, we've got the greenish cubes. These represent potential blocks. So these are containing transactions that are pending. The transactions have been broadcast to the Bitcoin network, but they have not yet been added to the blockchain. So they are waiting in the queue. And you can see that there's about 5 potential blocks that are waiting at the moment. But there could be only one, there could be over 100. It really depends on the global demand to move Bitcoin around, which fluctuates day to day. Also, these green cubes are sorted by the transaction fee. So the potential block that is closest to being mined into the blockchain, that contains all of the transactions that are paying the highest transaction fee rate. That's because the miners want to choose the transactions that are going to make them the most money. So they're going to mine those ones first. And then all of these other potential cubes, potential blocks are containing other pending transactions that are paying lower fees. So they're still in the queue, but they're going to have to wait a little bit longer before they're actually added to the blockchain and confirmed. All right, so now that we've looked at the blocks on the blockchain and the potential blocks that are upcoming, we can dive a little bit deeper here. So for example, I'm going to click on this greenish yellow potential block that's next in line here. And you can see that we get a look at all of these other small squares here. Each of these squares represents a transaction that is geared up to be included in this block. And you can see that there are a whole bunch of different size squares here. These represent how much data the transaction is using. There's a bunch of transactions geared up to be mined in this next block. And you can see that they're moving around and shifting as new transactions are coming in because people all around the world are broadcasting Bitcoin transactions, and mempool.space's node is becoming aware of them. They're being resorted according to the fee rate. Some transactions are getting deprioritized as new ones are coming in that are paying higher fee rates. Fee rates are very important if you're navigating Bitcoin, because when you send a transaction, you're going to want to choose a fee rate that is not too high, so you're not wasting money, and also not too low, so your transaction isn't stuck waiting in the mempool. So mempool.space is actually a great tool to use to be able to see what the current fee rates are. At the time of recording, you can see here in this transaction fees section, it says that the high priority fee rate is only 3 Satoshis per byte, which is fairly low. The lowest is 1. And also, you had a transaction with really no priority to it, you could get away with paying less, like 2 Satoshis per byte. So you can construct your transaction using that information. And I find it helpful as well. If we look up in the actual cubes here, you can see that this next block that's geared up to be mined here, it has a range of fee rates across its transactions. The range is from 2 up to 82. Usually there are some transactions that are overpaying by quite a lot. Nobody really needs to be paying 82 in this case, but somebody did. But this gives you an idea that as long as you're paying more than 2 sats per byte, your transaction should end up in this, next potential block. Whereas if you chose a number like 1 Satoshi per byte, you might end up in some of these blocks that are further down in the list, and you have to wait longer for your transaction to actually be finalized. You can also see the fee rates that were included in transactions in blocks that have already been mined on this side as well. All right, so next I'm going to take you into individual transaction data. So I'm just going to go into one of these recently mined blocks here, and I'm going to randomly pick a transaction. So I have no idea who these transactions belong to, but I just randomly clicked on one, and all transactions are indeed public. So first we can see at the top the transaction ID. This is a bunch of letters and numbers that identifies this transaction. Every transaction has one of these. You can also see the fee, which is 482 Satoshis was paid to miners to get this transaction mined, which is about 50 cents at the moment. You can also see the fee rate was 3.43 Satoshis per byte. If we scroll down a little bit, we get a nice little flow chart that explains how many inputs and outputs there were. That's how many sources Bitcoin was coming out of and how many destinations Bitcoin's being sent to. In this case, a little bit of Bitcoin went towards the fee, but then there were also 2 destinations. We get a little bit more information down here where it says inputs and outputs. We can see the address that some Bitcoin was coming out of and the amount. We also get to see the 2 destination addresses and how much Bitcoin is being sent to each of those. In this case, one of the destinations is actually the same as the address that is spending the Bitcoin, so that must be the change for this transaction coming back to the sender. At the very bottom, we get some technical data about the transaction. I would say the most useful part down here is probably the virtual size, or basically the bytes of data that this transaction is using, which is 140.5 in this case. It's not very much data because there's only 1 input and 2 outputs, but that is the amount of data that really results in the fee of the transaction. Because if we take 140.5 and we multiply that by 3.43, it'll end up at the 482 Satoshis that was paid to the miners. Now, if I have a transaction ID such as this one, and if I were just coming to the mempool.space homepage, I could paste the transaction ID up in the search bar and hit search. And that's going to point to where the transaction is on the blockchain or potentially still pending. And I would be met with all of that information that we just covered. Also, if you have an address, for example, one of these addresses, you could click on it. You can see a lot more information about the address. For example, the confirmed balance, how much Bitcoin this address is currently holding. You can also see the total transaction history, all of the transactions that this address has ever been a part of. So it shows us a history for this address. It's been involved with several transactions in the past. If we keep scrolling down here, we can see it has participated in 17 different transactions up to this point, and we could investigate any of these transactions further if we were interested in that information. Likewise, if I had an address copied, a valid Bitcoin address, and I were coming to mempool.space for the first time, and I'm just on the home page right now, I could paste the address into the search bar, click search, and it will pull up that information that we just covered. So the most useful thing that you can do if you have a transaction ID or an address and you want to look for more information, you just come to this website, search for it, and you'll be connecting to mempool.space's node and looking at all of the data, the transaction data associated with that transaction or that address. All right, now that we've taken a tour of the basics of mempool.space, I want to show you a practical example of how a blockchain explorer might be integrated with a wallet software. So I have an Unchained vault pulled up here. This is just a test vault with a tiny bit of Bitcoin in it. And you can see that there are a couple of transactions in the transaction history down here, a deposit and a withdrawal. And on the right side, there is a link icon. If I want to see more details about one of the transactions that I've done in this vault, I could just click that link and it opens the transaction ID right in mempool.space. So I could see which block the transaction got mined and also all of the other details that I might be interested in. Similarly, if I had just conducted a withdrawal, I would be seeing this broadcast success indicator and a transaction ID. So if I had just conducted a withdrawal, I would be able to check the status of the transaction, whether it was still pending or confirmed. By using this link here, it'll just pull it up in mempool.space and show me the status of my withdrawal. So this is a practical way that you might use mempool.space, is to see the status of your transaction and also the destination addresses that Bitcoin is being sent to and the fee rate and everything else you might be interested in. Hopefully this video gives you a better understanding of what a blockchain explorer is and why they're so useful and how to actually use one. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.